walked in and sure as shit, they were kicking the shit out of each other in the mechanic shop, and I was like,
That was the place they practiced in? They just turned it into a makeshift gym?
They just threw some mats down in the garage back then. There were all these holes in the sheetrock, where people's heads had gone through. And there was like just this old salvaged brown couch that people could sit on, that was just rotten. They'd pulled in, probably somebody threw out and they pulled it in, right. And that's where my career started.
Shit's about to go down. I'm feeling something in my spirit.
Chats Tatts with Aaron Della Vedova.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Chats and Tats with me, your host, Aaron Della Vedova. I'm so stoked about today. So I became a huge fan of this man when I watched the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. I was new to MMA, didn't know much about the whole sport, just thought it was exciting, interesting, watched that reality show, and this guy just was wildly entertaining, interesting, full of fire, and it really started my journey of becoming a super fan. And he's got a great story too. It's the hero's journey, coming from difficult times, really pushing through those times, being willing to change things that weren't working in his life, and landing him where he is today. And I think it's a cool story. It's an inspiring story. I hope you guys feel the same. So without further ado, please welcome my friend, the guest today, Chris, the Crippler Leben.
What's up, man? I'm stoked to be here. This
Right
is going to be a fun day.
It is, because we're going to chat, but we're going to tattoo as well.
We're going to tattoo.
But we're not going to get into that. We'll tell them all about that later. But I'll tell you what, man, I was really honored when I had no idea you knew my work, and you were like, man, I've always wanted to get tattooed by you. And I was like, really? Chris wants to get tattooed by me? So here we are.
Well, I'm super excited. So, I already drew something up. We'll talk about it later, but I can't wait. So
I don't know. I do want to hear your kind of origin story, where you were from and how you got into fighting and the thing and how it all came to be where it is today. So maybe you could just highlight some of that for us, your story.
All right, Cliff Notes. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and then at a early age moved up to a place called Mount Hood.
I know Mount Hood.
My family is more or less hillbillies,
It's a beautiful area, though. I mean, you say hillbilly, but of course, I'm only going to the ski resort.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I tell people all the time. Listen, I go back, I'll go back and snowboard for a few days. Other than that, fuck the rain, fuck the snow. Like there's a reason I live in San Diego.
Okay. All right.
Living in it can be tough. But yeah, rough childhood, a lot of times, there wasn't, our water would be out, our power would be out. My mom, as hard as she tried, was a single mother that bartended all night, may have had a small amphetamine habit, so my brother and I, although never abused, we're really just kind of left to our own devices, when it came to cook, even real young cooking or as I got into high school, getting any sort of school clothes, I had to go steal those, and I had to make my way, getting bus fare to go to school. That sort of stuff was left up to me. If I didn't go to school, I didn't have to go to school. I didn't, if I stayed out all night, it was fine to stay out all night. When I come home, there might be half a dozen tweakers in my house rewiring the house, so I would just sneak into my room, go to bed on the nights I did come home. And at where I lived in Portland was a pretty rough neighborhood, and
I know. By the way, I tattooed in Portland. The first year of my tattoo career was in Portland, Beaverton.
Okay. Beaverton.
So what area of Portland are we talking? It's the southeast, right?
Yeah, I lived in what they call Felony Flats, which is like 52nd and Flayville. That's where I lived, was 52nd and Flayville. If you go there now, it's not an awesome spot.
Okay.
I spent most of my time with my friends downtown, running around skateboarding. I always thought I was going to be a professional skateboarder growing up.
Really?
Didn't work out. Some of my friends went pro and semi-pro, and they still skate every day. They do well. Mm-hmm. But I ultimately, I started boxing in middle school. They were all skateboarding, were smoking weed, doing that whole thing. And for some reason, I would catch the bus across town every day and go to boxing class. And that's really where my martial arts journey kind of started off. And I think it had to do with. Obviously it's the way you grow up. My older brother is 18 months older than me. He was a fucking asshole. And if you ask him, he's the reason I ever became a UFC fighter because he made me tough. So I had a bully for an older brother. I was picked on pretty well my younger years in school. Had a lot of problems with dyslexia and reading and writing, and obviously I had the shittiest clothes, so kids are mean, man. So I started learning how to be tough. Ultimately, when my freshman year in high school, I got tripped by a bully, Micah. He was a wrestling jock. I had no desire to wrestle. And this fucker tripped me in the hallway in front of some girls. So I joined the wrestling team the next day. and fast forward to my sophomore year, I ended up beating him for his varsity spot. So,
nice one.
If we talk about my story, a lot of my motivation was spite. At that young age was spite and anger. And desire to prove myself, to prove my worth, because my future was being a tweaker pumping gas, and that's the route that everybody in my family's taken. I'm the first guy to graduate high school. Nobody's really made it far, in my family. So, then it was the same thing after high school. I did well in wrestling. Brief stint in the military that didn't work out. If you've never had discipline your whole life, the military turns out to not be the greatest spot for you. But long story short, I had some offers for colleges to wrestle. I couldn't read when I graduated, so I joined the military. I thought I'd wrestle for them. Ended up not. What
going, branch?
The Army.
Okay.
Went 82nd Airborne. I was 67 Tango. Did that for a while till they wouldn't let me try out for the Army wrestling team. Then I decided I'll just drive home, which, again, hindsight's 2020. Nothing I'm proud of, but the military frowns on that. So ended up in military jail for a while. And it's funny how things work out because, it was shortly after that I got out of military jail, and I was selling cars at this car lot, hustling cars, and my brother was also a used car salesman. Not a lot of ethics in me back then. Definitely a job I couldn't do now. But he called me one day and he said, Randy Couture and Matt Lindland are kicking the shit out of each other in this fucking in the garage of this auto dealership that I'm working at. And I was like, what? Well, and at the time, Randy Couture was the UFC champion.
Right,
and he was my hero. I was already a big fan. Again, I had boxed, I had wrestled. I used to try to practice the moves, but there wasn't a lot of places to train. It wasn't common. Like combat sports were not cool
what year is this roughly we're talking now?
So I graduated in 99. So 2001.
Okay.
2001.
Early 2000s.
Early
Okay.
2000s, 2001. And then I walked in. I met my coach, Robert Follis, and I signed up, and I was there every single day. And that's what changed my life. That I walked in and sure as shit, they were kicking the shit out of each other in the mechanic shop, and I was like,
That was the place they practiced in? They just turned it into a makeshift
They just
gym?
threw some mats down in the garage back then. There were all these holes in the sheetrock, where people's heads had gone through. And there was like just this old salvaged brown couch that people could sit on, that was just rotten. They'd pulled in. Probably somebody threw out and they pulled it in.
Right.
And that's where my career started, so kind of kind of bringing you up from there. Obviously outside of the cage, I continued to get in a lot of trouble. Pretty reckless. My mantra, in my younger life was everything in excess, nothing in moderation. Go fast, kick ass, chug beers, crank tunes. Every day I come in, I'd ask my coach, "You get me a fight yet?" And he said, "You only been here one day." Next day I came in, "You give me a fight yet?" So I did that for the first 6 months, and finally Robert was like, "Fuck, listen, I got you a fight," and which was probably not a good idea. I'd only been training for 6 months in actual MMA, and I had my first fight. I remember thinking like, "What the fuck am I thinking?" Looking across, here's this big ass scary dude, and I won. The next day, there was about, I don't know, maybe 10 people online. Back then they had these boards or whatever, chat rooms, talking about my fight, me. And I thought I was a fucking celebrity, so that was it. I was hooked. I remember I told my old lady at the time, I said, "I'm gonna quit going." I was going to night school. Thought maybe I'd be an electrician, so I was getting my math up in night school, and I said, I'm gonna quit going to night school. "Oh, good. You can be home one night a week." And I was like, "No, I have to train every day. This is it." Long story, that relationship didn't work out, So from that point, I kind of I moved into my best friend's mom's basement, so I had real low rent. I worked for 4 or 5 hours a day, and then I went to the gym till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and then I went out and partied all night long, and that was my life every single day. Up until I got that call for the Ultimate Fighter.
Okay.
And that's kind of where people start to know who I am, was after that first season.
So you must have made a relatively strong name for yourself for someone to call you for that show. I mean, there was a lot of people they could have called, but how'd you get everyone's attention? You've been winning a lot more fights?
Well, there's a couple things. One, the pool was much smaller back then,
Okay.
Fighting wasn't nearly as popular. I was already kind of knocking on the UFC's door. I think at that point I was like 14-1 or something like that, coming into the Ultimate Fighter. But what really helped was my coach was Randy Couture, who also happened to be the coach on the show. So it's kind of a funny story. I don't think I've told this one before, but so he tells me, he says, "Hey, I want you to send in this videotape," and so I send in this videotape. They schedule me to come down and try out for the show. They have all these things planned for these tryouts to see who they're going to select. The first tryout, the first thing they were doing to filter guys was they brought you into this hotel room. They sat you down in front of a microphone and a camera, and they said, "Tell us why you should be on this show." Well, 22-year-old Chris Leben was a pretty confident guy, So long story short, I start telling him why I should be on the show, and about 5 minutes later, this side door kicks open, and Dana White comes in with the producer of the show, and they're rolling laughing. Dana's like, "That's it, buddy. You're on the show. You don't got to do shit. You're in.
They could see the entertainment
So
value.
they were watching kind of closed circuit, from the other room. Right. I had no idea, and that was how I got on the Ultimate Fighter.
That's odd. And I'm assuming big turning point, right? I mean, not maybe how well you fight and how good and perform, but that puts you right in the spotlight of this whole new emerging sport, MMA.
I think, turning point, not just for me, but for the UFC as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
The UFC up until that point was kind of like an underground thing.
Yep.
We had the, got real big. Then you had these dark years where it got taken off pay-per-view, and, boxing was really trying to shut it down. And then the show. The show, which when we filmed it, we didn't even know if it was going to air. It was really a shot in the dark, that show. And then it did so well. You know, I remember telling Danny, yeah, man, maybe I'll get a free beer out of this when I'm back in Portland, you know? I didn't realize the magnitude whatsoever. I didn't realize I wasn't going to be able to go to the mall without getting stopped half a dozen times trying to walk to the store I want to go to, you know? So
you didn't know the fame and
not,
all this was coming.
I couldn't have conceptualized it if you would have explained it to me. You know, the show was a bigger hit than anybody's wildest dreams or anybody could have hoped for, you know, and you know, and my character on that show, you know, a lot of people related. So my life changed overnight.
How was that like hearing about the fame that you didn't know was coming? You didn't even know what it was. And here it is. Suddenly people want your autograph, taking pictures with you. I mean, I'd like to hear about it because you hear a lot of people that's pushed upon them. And sometimes it's okay. A lot of times it fucks people up. I mean, how was that for you?
For me, you know, there was two sides to it. Looking back, you know, that's all I ever wanted. I just, you know, my whole life I was trying to prove that I was tough and that I was worthy. And years later, I figured out I was trying to prove that to myself, not anybody else. I always had this sense of less, of my self-worth was never high. Maybe it's because you know, how I grew up and, you know, the neglect or whatever, you know, you can dig into the childhood, you know, so I got that, but then when I got that sense of self-worth didn't go away. So I had this sense of guilt that my, you know, my brother and my family were still there. And all of a sudden everybody knew who I was. And, you know, it caused me a lot of struggle, a lot of struggle. And then all of a sudden I had all these friends, you know, and I didn't know who was real and who was fake, you know, and I got hurt a lot, not just in male-female relationships, but also in relationships with people that I thought were my friends, you know, and, you know, and I realized that they weren't. So, it's a lot to deal with, you know. You never expect that to actually happen to somebody, you know. But when I went through it, you know, I struggled. I definitely struggled with it.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of people do, especially at a young age, and never coped with anything of that magnitude before, and suddenly you're doing it, and you're doing it by yourself. It's not like you had this father figure or family that had been through these things, could help coach you through it. You're just all alone, navigating this new world of fame and maybe some money in your pocket all of a sudden, and what am I going to do with this? And this is a time that I do want to touch on this with drugs and alcohol. This is a time where you're still doing these things, except now you're famous.
Yeah, I got more money to spend on them.
And you're probably, you know, everybody wants you in the club, you know, come on in, Chris.
Yeah.
So this is making access to this relatively destructive part of your life is probably amplifying or...
Oh, 100%. As my career progressed, so did my drug intake. You know, as my fame or notoriety progressed, so did my coping mechanisms. You know, and excuse me. And for me, that was drugs and alcohol. You know, I always had a problem with social anxiety. You know, I guess, and I figured out at an early age that alcohol fixed that. You know, a lot of people find it hard to believe. They're like, oh, he's semi-famous or whatever. He must be really popular. And like, no, I get to this day. You know, if I'm in a room with a bunch of people, I'm uncomfortable. That being said, alcohol fixed that. When I got that job selling cars at 20 years old, you know, I figured out I couldn't be drunk on the job. You know, they frown on that. But I figured out a couple Vicodin, you know, I could talk to anybody, you know. So really that's where it started. And then as I started fighting, you know, the cocaine came into the picture, you know, these girls, you got to have the cocaine, you know, you got the all night party and that's my life really became a series of extreme highs and lows, you know, and really a cycle from fight to fight. You know, I would it wasn't as bad in the beginning of my career, but more or less it was always the same. I would fight, get loaded immediately, party hard for like a month. I would take a month to start trying to clean myself up for a 2-month camp. And that's a 4-month that's a 4-month cycle. That's 3 fights a year, and that's generally what I was on in the UFC. So, and it got to the point where, I would have to fly a coach out, whether I was in, Portland or Hawaii or Seattle, and I would have a coach live with me to literally babysit my ass, make sure I got up, make sure I went to bed, make sure I wasn't getting too loaded.
So you're using during camp too. You don't just go clean for those 2 months. You're cutting back.
Well, especially towards the end, what I would do is as my alcohol content went down, my pills would go up. And everybody, oh look, Chris is losing weight. He's not drinking as much. He's doing real good. Little did they know I was just switching one for the other.
Right.
And it got to the point where I used to get this big calendar, and I would put it up on my wall, and I'd say, okay, I'm gonna take 3 of these, and then I'm gonna take 2, and then I'm gonna switch to taking 5 of these, and then I'm gonna take 4, and then 3, and then I'm gonna switch to these until by the time I got to the fight, I was just drinking a bottle of NyQuil a day and taking a bunch of ibuprofen. And believe it or not, that worked for several fights. It worked till it didn't work, and
right.
it's part of my story. And I fought Munoz in England. I tested positive for both Percocet and OxyContin. And it's one of those things. I had gone through the whole tapering off. I got out there. And it was the stress and anxiety. I took them the night before the fight, even though I fucking knew they were gonna test me. You know what I mean? That's where it had gone. I just couldn't handle the stress and the anxiety that I had being in my own skin. It wasn't necessarily the anxiety of fighting. It wasn't that. It was just the anxiety of sitting in my own body, and dealing with people and the cameras and the hype of the UFC. I think that was much, much more for me than the actual competition itself. It's there's always a camera in your face. You're doing interviews all day, and it's and that's when I ended up getting suspended for a year. The UFC sent me to rehab. Thank God, we could talk about that later if we want to. I ended up never took another OxyContin. I did end up on Suboxone for several years, which is a fucking nightmare to come off too. But
What is that, like a replacement for opiates?
yeah, it's like
like methadone.
Very similar to methadone. The difference is you can't overdose on it and die. And if you take it, you can't take any other opiates. But it very certainly affects your brain chemistry. The biggest issue is I think if you can Google it. I think it's the hardest drug on the planet to come off.
No shit.
Most people that get on that, they never come off. They never come off. It's a nightmare because if you're a lot of pills or even heroin or something like that, if you're kicking it, it's 3 rough days. I mean, it takes a little bit after that, but 3 real shitty days. Well, this is more like 2 real shitty months, just because of the half-life. So, but I lucked out. I got thrown in jail for 6 months.
Forced sobriety.
I got thrown in jail, and that was the best rehab I'd ever been to. I spent the first couple weeks on the
What happened? Why jail? What happened?
The state of California frowns on unlicensed automatic weapons.
Okay.
So I got in some trouble. I was going through a divorce. This was right after my UFC career had come to an end, which certainly didn't end in the fashion that I wanted it to. So I was extremely depressed about that. My relationship was falling apart. I was drinking real heavy. I just got fired from my job. And I got arrested with firearms and I got a felony for it. you know, and I did 6 months right down here in San Diego, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It really truly was the best thing that ever happened to me, because that's when I realized, like, what the fuck am I doing? This everything in excess, nothing in moderation, that, you know, that I thought was cool. It wasn't cool, you know. Those last few months, you know, after my UFC career ended, when I was trying to work as a coach and I was showing up drunk, and no, my phone wasn't ringing anymore. No, those parties with playmates and fucking strobe lights, that shit was over. You know, my party was on my couch by myself. Lonely, really lonely, I think is the, you know. After I got out of jail, never took another Suboxone. Fuck, I got that shit out of my system. Never again. And it really was the beginning. Now, I had tried to get sober multiple times. You know, I had tried controlled drinking. You know, I saw the way I looked on the show, you know, and everybody else, you know, and up until then, I never realized I even had any sort of an issue. It's the way everybody around me drank. I drank the way my family and friends drank, you know, so I didn't think it was weird. Long story short, you know, I'd get some time, I'd fall off, I'd get some time, I'd fall off. As we sit here today, I haven't had a drink in 4.5 years. So, you know.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah. You know, and I don't plan to. You know, you know, some people can, you know, learn how to, you know, they have that wild childhood or whatever, and then they can learn to control their drinking. For me, it's just, you know, at this point, I really don't even have a desire. You know, I'm just, I'm now comfortable. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some things I don't do because I don't drink. I'm not a big fan of going to concerts anymore. I used to love to go to concerts, but I don't want to be jammed in a bunch of fucking people, you know, when I'm sober. Going out to the bar a lot of times, you know, it's not my thing, you know, but I've come to realize with my years, that's okay. You know, I got the shit I like to do. My life is 100% full, you know, where I went from just wanting to prove that I was worthy to all of a sudden having all these friends and this money, you know, to again losing everything. You know, no car, no job, no fucking money, you know, health was failing. I had legal trouble, you know, to where I am now, which is, you know, I've got a wonderful 5-year-old boy. He's never seen me drink. You know, I'm reffing, I'm judging. You know, I own my own gym in Pacific Beach. You know, so I'm training guys, and I'm giving back. You know, like I get all these kids, and I think that my life wouldn't be what it is today if I wouldn't have went through all that. You know, through those struggles, you know, and it puts me in a unique place to hopefully relate, you know, because a lot of when I say I got a lot of these kids, they're you know, I got these 20-year-old kids, and they all got the same problems I had. Listen, you don't decide you want to be an ultimate fighter because you were real good in school and your upbringing was, you know, it's just nobody says, hey, I want to risk getting the shit kicked out of myself in front of my friends, family, and a million people on TV. That's my dream. You know, no sane person and is going to put the work in to do it. You know, you already got to have some problems to get there. So all these kids that come in, you know, I go, I might not know it yet, but I'll figure it out. There's something in their closet. There's a reason they're here. And I'll tell you, over all the years I've been coaching, you know, that has proven to be 100% correct. Everybody that comes in as straight as an arrow as they can appear, there's something there, you know, and part of my job as a coach is to figure that out and try to help them overcome that, and then also help their physical, you know, and their skills inside the cage.
Well, I think your life has made you perfectly suited to do so, right? These young men coming in and you having gone through, you know, an extreme version of that, and you being able to relate and spot that and probably be an advisor, a father figure, a mentor, not just a coach.
I like older brother, but
older brother. Yeah, it's a little less creepy.
yeah.
But yeah, that's fucking amazing. And it is, isn't it crazy how these seemingly bad things happen to us in life?
Yeah.
And the perspective can change it 100%. And I'm 51 now, and I've stopped saying things are bad anymore. I just say, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. That happened, and yeah, it's kind of a shitty day today, but I don't know what the fuck it means. Maybe it means we're gonna sell that business and do something else, or we're gonna move. I don't know. And I have yet to look back on any tragedy, and luckily, I should probably say there are acute tragedies that are just bad, and that is, your wife dies or your children get injured. Like, there are some things, I get that. But I'm just talking more about life circumstances, losing jobs, getting arrested, kicking drug habits, losing, a lot of things you went through. You can now look back and see like, oh, wow, it all had to happen step by step in this way to make you what you are today, to put you in a position to be that kind of a mentor. Because, advice to these young men coming from someone who hadn't been through it doesn't really work as well. You've been there. They listen. They relate. Being on the show today and people hearing your story, they'll listen to a guy like that. They're not going to listen to some Yale graduate, from a rich family that never had a problem his whole life, and I'm going to teach you how to live your life. They're like, man, I can't fuck you. Don't
He's
know
an expert on it, though.
Right?
You know what
he's
I
an
mean?
expert,
He
right?
read all the books.
He read all the books. No, I just think that's a fucking great story, and it has a happy ending. Where you're at today, healthy, happy, thriving, doing what you love.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations to that, because I think statistically that's kind of you beat a lot of odds. There's a shitload of people that don't come out of that, and they're still there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's funny, where you are, where you're at, and then where is life going?
Mm-hmm.
And for me at this point, it's that third part that I'm so excited about. The progression, of how good my life has gotten in the last few years, and I'm like, dude, if I stay on this path, where the fuck am I going to be at in a year, or another 2 years, or another 4.5 years? Where am I going to be? What am I going to be doing? I'm going to have multiple gyms. Am I going to, how much life can I pack in to one body? Because my biggest problem nowadays is, my phone doesn't stop ringing. I'm answering texts all the time. I'm getting invited to do this or invited to do that, and I have too much, that's my biggest complaint, is there's just not enough hours in the day, and that's really not a bad problem to have.
No, it's not. And you spend your whole life saying yes, and then when you find success, you learn the art of saying no. Occasionally, right? That's something
I'm still working on that.
Me too, because when you fight your whole life just to get opportunities, and then the opportunities start flooding in, the auto response is, yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. And then I know for me, there's been weeks where I'm like, oh my God, I haven't seen my children. My wife's wondering what the hell's going on. And I'm just saying yes to too much. And it's time to put up the wall and be.
It's actually funny you mentioned that. That's where I'm at now, where I'm really having to try to teach myself to be a little bit more picky and finicky, and choose what I think is best, because you got to manage your time.
Yeah,
there's time is our most valuable asset, and I really try to, do as much as I can, but now, especially this last year, has been all right. I need to give myself some me time too.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I forgot about that somewhere along the way, that hey, I need my quiet time. I need my time to unwind. I need to make sure that my family is number one priority, regardless of how important all this other shit is. And in my sobriety too, for me, I need to make sure that is a priority, even though I got all this fucking other life going on that wants to pull me away. I wouldn't have any of it, and without, the sobriety and the lifestyle that I've chosen, and, without my foundation, which is my family.
That's where I'm at. I mean, in the end, you slowly realize what really matters, right? And that usually happens after you have a relative amount of success, because when you're achieving that success, maybe I'm defending myself a little bit, but it seemed to me that there was a fight there. And, I've gotten a little bit of crap over the years from my wife and my kids. Where are you, Dad? And maybe I could have managed it better, but there's another part of me. It's like, I can give you guys more now, but man, back then I don't know. It took 60 hours a week. That's just what I thought it took. I did the best I could. We have that luxury, I guess, is what I'm saying. Once you achieve a certain amount, you can say no to certain things. You can carve out a day or two a week to go hang out with yourself or your family. But that's earned. That's not, you don't get that in the early phase of your career.
No, you got to grind.
You got to grind.
You got to grind,
Yes. So for all you people out there and wives, to men like us, forgive us for those grindy years. We didn't know how else to do it. I didn't know how else to do it.
Look, whatever you want to call it, God, your higher power, whatever, the universe, whatever you believe in, listen, it'll give you the tools, but you got to do the fucking work. Yeah. You got to do the legwork, bro. You know what I mean? Like, you don't just get to wait for it to pop in there, That would be nice. It'd be nice. Maybe that works for some people, but that's not my story.
I don't know anyone that got there without the work. I've never met one. So I think you're right. But I agree with you as well. I mean, visualization is, I think, a very helpful tool, but it's just one component in this list of things we all have to do to be successful. And most of it's pure action. It's getting up when you don't feel like getting up early, or whatever you got to do, going to that meeting, even though you don't want to be there, doing the push-ups, doing the running. Yours is more physical. Mine's been more mental.
But and I think, there's two sides of the coin. I'm definitely on the over, I'm guilty of the overtraining or overworking, A lot of my guys say, Coach, I'm beat up, I'm going to take the day off. And I'm like, what the fuck? You take the day off? Why, because your arm hurts? No, get it, get in. And am I wrong? Scientifically, probably, if you talk to the science of the best personal trainers in the world, that kid should probably take a rest day, right? If you talk to me and what I know about winning and what I know about competition, I sometimes feel like the mental aspect is more important than the physical aspect, and I think he should probably be in there, and he should probably train even though he's hurt, Yeah. And I know there's people that are going to disagree with me on that. I'm certain in the comments we're going to hear, it's, we all know that you need 8 hours or 9 hours of sleep a night, and you need to do this. Well, not at first.
Right. Not at first. That's a good point you made.
Not at first. You gotta grind. You gotta want it. You gotta want it, and you gotta do everything in your power to get every little bit closer you can get. If you got a fucking hurt arm, well, shit, you still got 2 legs and another arm, so you got plenty to do. When it comes to the gym. My boxing coach told me, he used to say years ago, he would say, Joe Kim, if one car on the train breaks down, you don't stop the whole train.
I like that one.
And I always remember that. I always took that with me.
That's a good one. That's a new one to me. And but it clicks. That's clicking with me. Like, yeah, maybe you can't do this one thing today, but there's probably 10 other things you can do. And just because you're uncomfortable, or maybe you woke up with a migraine, doesn't mean you can't do this other stuff, That's it. So just pick something else and do something else, right. But keep moving.
That's my theory.
Yeah.
That's my theory. Might be wrong. And not everything has to work for everybody. You know what I mean? If you could sit back and just let everything come to you, do that. Sounds
yeah, but Chris, easier. I mean, one thing that I think should be said is you're in something that it's built for people that want to be at the top 1%, right? Not everyone's after the top 1% of everything. I mean, I have friends in the tattoo game that are super content and happy. They never did bodysuits, and they've been tattooing as long as me. They never took on these larger projects, and they just were happy, just going home at night, making dinner, coming in the next day, doing some cool tattoos, taking a week off, going on vacation. And I mean, fuck, more power to you, man. I didn't live that way. But
You're 100% right, because I say for example, my gym, we've got I've got guys that are knocking on the door of the UFC. I've got other guys getting ready for their first fight. I've also got guys and gals that have no desire to ever get hit in the face.
Right.
But they want to go in, they want to get their workout, they want to sweat, they want to feel like they learned something constructive while they're training. They want to train in a realistic fashion. You know what? And all those things, if you're just trying to lose weight, great. You know what I mean? If you need more self-confidence, great. If you want to be a high-level competitor, fantastic. All those things are just fine.
But the one who's just in there to get the good workout and lose some weight, if they want to take the day off because their knee hurts, then that's fine. But what you're commenting towards are guys that have told you, I want to be the best.
Yes.
And what they need to do is different. I just lost an artist here at my own shop, and I love him, and he's going to go do his own thing. But it became clear that he was like, look, you're running some kind of Navy SEAL tattoo shop.
I was just literally just thinking, I'm going to hear the same thing. As soon as my guys hear this, like, Coach, you're talking about me, weren't you? I know you were talking about, you were fucking talking about me. I wasn't talking about you, dude.
But I mean, my point to him was after he really explained himself, I was cool with it. He was like, I don't know if I'm ready to be completely consumed by trying to become one of the best tattoo artists in the world. I see a life where I take a lot of time hiking and soul searching, and then I tattoo a little. And I'm like, fuck, man, you can't do it here because that's not. Well, I mean, that's just not what we do here,
That's great. You can't do it here, but.
And we're friends, and I love him. And he'll come back and do guest spots, and he might even come back and join this crazy little thing I've created another day.
Right.
But right now, it's not where he's at. It's fine. But I back to your advice to the guy with the hurt knee. I would say to that guy, if you're saying to me you want to be in the top 1%, I'm telling you these are the things you're going to have to do.
And it's funny because I'm on the same page. Even with all the, I remember my brother years ago telling me, Chris, the fucked up thing about you is no matter how hard we party, if you say you're going to run 5 miles in the morning, you wake up and run 5 miles in the morning. That was my thing to do. I'd wake up, pound a glass of water, run as fast as I could till I threw up. That's how I started my day for many years. Just get all the fucking booze out of there. I never missed a practice.
Wow.
I never missed a practice. I never missed a day at work. I did get fired for showing up drunk. I probably shouldn't have gone, but I never missed a practice. I've never missed a day at work. I certainly, if you look, people go, wow, all that stuff you were doing at the time, how you made it to that level is, it's incredible. And I think there's two things there. I think one, not only was I doing all that stuff, but two, also, I'm the least athletic person on the planet. Like, I'm not tall for my weight class. I can't run fast. I can't jump high. My hand-eye coordination isn't great. And I was never the best by any means. But you knew you were going to be in a fight if you were fighting me. It didn't matter who you were. Mm-hmm. And I got to that level, by grinding every day. That's what works for me, is grinding.
Developing that grit, that I'm not stopping. I'm okay with puking right now. I'm okay with the pain.
With lifestyle, I grind, and then for the most part in the cage, that's really what I'm known for. I'm a grinder. Right. It's hard to put me away. Most people would tell you, he hits pretty hard, and you're gonna have to kill him if you want to stop him because he's not gonna quit. Mm-hmm. And I won a lot of fights that I should have lost on paper. When you look back, a lot of fights that I should have absolutely lost. I lost, or I won on sheer will. Where there's really no reason I should have won that fight except for eventually the other guy just fucking quit. They got tired of punching me in the head, They're like, fuck, I can't kill this guy. What do I do?
I like that. I think a lot of people like that. I think because it really highlights the mental determination, the mental side of things, and physical is its own aspect. But I think ultimately in life, most people's challenges end up here. Yeah. Yes, sometimes someone gets in an accident and they can't use their legs. There are physical challenges. I'm not dismissing that. But most people, our problems end up here, our own limitations, what we're willing to do and where we think our line is, where I can't go any further. Well, you can. It's like in physical workouts, you might be on your 20th push-up and think I can't do one more. But the reality is, if somebody put a gun to the back of your head, you could crank out 5 more push-ups. So it's a lie. So you got to find those, where is actually my line, and where am I just telling myself?
That first season Ultimate Fighter, Randy had designed a run that was designed so everybody would fail. It was 5 minutes at 5 miles an hour, 5 minutes at 6 miles an hour, 5 minutes at 7 miles an hour, 5 minutes at 8 miles an hour, then 9 and then 10 miles an hour. And I drank a fifth of booze before that run. And I was by far the least in shape guy. Well, maybe not the least, but I was definitely towards the bottom as far as physical conditioning went going into the show. Everybody else got ready for the show. I didn't get ready for the show. I just partied. I was the only guy to finish the run, out of all the guys in that house. I did tear my hip out.
Really?
Yeah, but I finished the run.
Wow.
I finished with nothing. A couple shots of cortisone couldn't get me through, but and it's the same thing. You use the term gun. My coach used to say, I bet, if a lion jumped out behind you, you could run a little faster. And that's what I remember being. I remember, I had Randy and Dana on each side of me, and that's all I was thinking. If there's a fucking lion behind me, I'd keep running. Yeah. You know what I mean? And there's something to that, There is. So much of conditioning is mental. That translates. Whether that's, for me now, that's work. That's in front of the computer, where my conditioning sucks. On the mat, I got conditioning. I can last all day, physically. But, now running a business, and I'm sitting in front of that computer, I'm like, fuck, I'm ready to tap out, dude. And I just got to keep telling myself, you got to keep going. You keep pushing. Yeah. And slowly now, eventually I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at it. I can do longer periods of time and be more productive.
I think a big part of life, I feel like at this phase, is being comfortable being uncomfortable. Most of the time when you meet successful people, they are just more okay being uncomfortable. Whether that uncomfort is cranking out emails for 6 hours, I have to do that, I fucking hate it every time. Or whether it's running that run you had to run, which is uncomfortable. I mean, these things we're talking about, none of these things are going to kill you. Or right. Not. These things are going to be uncomfortable. And it's just how much discomfort are you willing to tolerate is ultimately the question all of the time.
What's your pain tolerance?
Yeah, your pain tolerance. I mean, hell, my world with tattooing, I go through this with people every day, and it's interesting to see how people, because I get to know these folks when I tattoo them. A lot of my projects are 100 hours, 150 hours, locked in a room, no cell phone, just tattooing. I get to know these people. Yeah. And I watch them get tattooed. And some people are very not okay with the discomfort. They need to walk out. They need to go to the bathroom. They need to have a cigarette. They need to have a sandwich. It's just constantly, you could see their head looking for the next reason to get the fuck away from me. And then I learn about their life, and I hear about the jobs they've had and the relationships they've had. And you see the pattern showing up in their work where they run away as soon as it gets uncomfortable. They're running away as soon as the relationship gets a little this. And then I got a client who sits there and I'm tattooing his inner groin or these areas that are just I know how I have that shit. It is another level. And they're uncomfortable. They're not feeling it different than I feel it or anybody else, but they somehow just tolerate the discomfort. And then you hear about their lives and you hear the stories of how they do it in their professional careers. They do it. So it's how we deal with physical pain is often revealing of how we deal with all discomfort, emotional, spiritual, whatever you want to fucking call it. So yeah, I mean, you developing the ability just to grind when it isn't comfortable probably serves you well in your business.
See, now I just have one thought, and that's like, I better not be a pussy when this guy starts tattooing me.
Oh God. I highly look at all your tattoos. No, you're gonna be fine.
No,
if you are, we'll edit that out.
Perfect.
We'll make you look like a badass.
The magic's in the editing. There we go.
Well, maybe before we get, I do want to shift this to tattooing. We are going to tattoo you today. I do want to talk about that, but I did have one other question just because you're here. And, MMA, where is it now? I just find, and I know you do too, it's just fascinating. A sport that just came out of nowhere. I mean, we've had all these sports on the planet for so long. Everybody's got this ancient history: football, soccer, basketball, and then this sport shows up and then just goes from nothing to huge. And it's so big now, and everyone's into it, and everyone's in the gym learning jiu-jitsu, and everybody, it's massive, and it seems to be going further and more in that direction. I think that's obvious, but I'd like to hear your take on where it is, where it came from, where it's going.
Well, fighting first is the oldest sport.
Well, that's a good point.
Period.
Right.
Ever. In the original Olympics, you had pancration and you had running. And that was. Because if you can't fight, you better be able to run. We talked about that a little bit. You got to be good at one of them back then. Back then, at least. But it went away for a long time. And society. We dubbed it. Barbaric or human whatever you want to call it.
We became too enlightened and
too enlightened. And if you look back over the history, the same thing has happened with boxing, where it was illegal for many years after it was legal, and then it came back, and then then there's obviously the politics of everybody wants the pay-per-views. Back in the day, boxing wanted the pay-per-views. They didn't want you to spend it on this, so you could spend it on that. But I think fighting is something that's so primal and so part of every human being, that there's not a person on earth that can't relate. They can't watch it and relate. And I mean, if you want to talk about competition in its truest form, fuck, that's hand-to-hand combat, dude. You know what I mean? There's no tools. There's no ball. There's nothing. There's no sword. There's nothing. It's one body versus another body. How am I gonna beat you? This, and this body might be tall and long. This body might be short and strong. And what attributes do I have to, how do my attributes stack up against their attributes? And then what happens is after you start to learn and develop your skills. For example, for me, like I tell people, like, I never liked the actual fight. Anybody that tells you they love the actual fight is probably fucking lying. Maybe there's a few crazy people out there, but it hurts. It's stressful. There's a lot of worry and anxiety. Now what it is it's a necessary part of what we do. For me, it's a measuring stick, I love the gym, the camaraderie of the gym, developing my skills, figuring out, and then having the fight and go, okay, what worked, whether I win or lose, what worked, what didn't work, what needs improvement, how do I tweak this to make it better next time? Right? So as an athlete, it's that quest to be the best that you can be with the body that you have.
Training your body to be the best athlete you can be.
Yeah.
But the measuring stick at the end
is the fight. And,
right.
and I think now, where fighting was, where people saw it as so barbaric, particularly with the introduction to the Ultimate Fighter and getting to know these athletes on more of a personal level and getting to see their journey. I think people are starting to really understand the art portion of martial arts, right? Mm-hmm. Right, fighting arts. Like where's the counter here? Is he gonna move left or move right? How's this guy gonna get out of this? Like, this setup is unbeatable. What's he gonna do? And we're seeing that now, where just the general knowledge of the average fan is incredibly high.
Right.
Although they've never competed, they know every submission. They know how this fight ended, how that fight ended, and at that point, I feel like you're not just watching the fight for entertainment value. Like you're involved, you're invested. Mm-hmm. You understand the athlete, you understand what they've went through, and you understand the difficulties and the challenges that they're going to face to try to overcome their enemy or their foe or their challenge or whatever. Not enemy, but and in the last decade, because of that, and because of that explosion in eyeballs on the sport, and people being involved in the sport, it has progressed so much where I feel like, I have these books from the 1700s, 1800s of old catch wrestling moves and stuff, people were doing it back then, but it's almost like a forgotten art, for so many years. And now it's just completely unfolding into this whole new thing that we've never seen this level of, and for me, it's fascinating because, luckily, now being a ref and a judge, I get the best seat in the house to some of the biggest fights in the world, and I get to watch these guys, these best guys in the world, and the shit that they come up with. I never would have thought of it, the progression and the way the game has changed. I hear people tell me all the time, don't you wish, Chris, it was like back in your day when you guys were fighting to the death? Well, no, because those guys weren't as good. You know what I mean? That's why we were able to fight that way. These guys are so fucking dangerous nowadays that at the highest level that you can't make one mistake. The game has definitely changed. But it's evolved is what it's done. What I want to know is when is it gonna, because right now it's on an exponential rise, where the guys are getting better and better every year, and the champion 3 years ago doesn't even stack up against the champion today, and in another 3 years that champ is going to be a whole nother exponential level higher.
And like you were getting to there, where is the plateau? When does it stop doing this? Because it does. Everything does at some point. Nothing goes like this forever. So when are we going to reach that point where it just starts to arch it and do that? Because we're still in the
fucking baseball or whatever. I don't watch baseball, but I'd imagine baseball's more or less been hasn't changed that much in the last 10 years.
Right.
Right.
Well, I'll jump in there because it was really fascinating hearing you talk about that, because I could have just replaced the word MMA with tattooing and the story would have made perfect sense. The timelines and everything. First, you started with, well, actually, Aaron, it's an ancient sport that's just now come back to us. Same with tattooing. Because some people are like, what do you think about this trend of tattooing? I'm like, it's the oldest art form in the world. and they laugh sometimes. I'm like, no, seriously, the oldest human being ever dug up on the fucking planet. It was covered in tattoos. Yeah. So are we coming up? Yes, but this has been around before your fancy gallery paintings and sculptures. Right. This shit was happening first. This is cave wall shit on skin. So, but yeah, and we did the same thing, early 90s, it's just this. And then since then it's this. And the capabilities of tattooers nowadays it's like MMA. It's like every year you think you saw the top of the food chain.
And you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a guy like me, I'm a 30-year tattooer and I'm just, where am I going to go? Because I cannot compete in the next 10 years. It's just
well, and I'll tell you what I think of all the time is and I tell my guys fuck, I'm glad I got in when I got in, because nowadays if I were to be a 22-year-old kid trying to get into this sport nowadays, fuck, I don't know. Right. I don't know. I might have done all right to a certain extent, but the level of these guys is so much higher,
And another thing you said that I thought was interesting is, MMA in its beginning years got a lot of pushback for being this barbaric sport, know?
Yeah.
And now it's changing. And I think one of the main reasons you highlighted, and I agree with, the reason it's changing is it's gotten so much more technical, right? It started off with like two guys are just going to punch and exchange punches until somebody falls down. And now with all the jiu-jitsu and the Thai kicking and everything and I'm missing 100 other tricks you could talk about, but it is such a chess game, I guess.
The understanding of that,
right?
The fact that our culture now understands. You ask 99% of people what a rear naked choke is or what an arm bar is, they got an idea. They may have never tried one, but they got an idea.
Yep.
Not too many years ago, that wasn't the case.
Right.
So they understand the beauty and there's some brutality, but they understand the art form part now, and going back to when I'm talking about competing, that's part of it, without that, without that risk, that's what makes the sport so incredible. It's listen, it's not like, oh fuck, these guys got a touchdown, now we're down on points. It's like, dude, I got a fucking broken nose and I'm inhaling blood. Like, I'm down on points.
The consequences
are.
are.
How are you gonna fight through that? That's the struggle. That's the struggle to watch, and you see guys, some guy gets hit in the eye, his eye explodes, and his will just breaks and he folds. You see other guys, they get hit in the eye, their eyes full shut, they can't see through it. Doesn't change a thing. Doesn't change a thing. That part about their character, and that to me is fascinating.
It is. It shows two different people there. And we can go into why they're different, but it's certainly two different people that react in those two separate ways. Yeah, and one other thing I was just thinking about is the more you understand the moves and the technical aspects of the sport, the more fun it is to watch.
100%.
When you start knowing, and I only know a few, but even I, like you said, I watch occasionally, but I know what an armbar is. I know what a rear naked choke is. I know what some of the escapes are.
Right.
And once you start knowing that, it's way more fun to watch because you're like, oh, it might look like to somebody else, like he's just holding him. I don't get it. Why don't they get up and start hitting each other again? It's like, no, man, he's right on the edge of a rear naked choke. Don't you see? If he gets his arm in there, that guy's fucked.
And yes.
I
couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of things like that, man. Like, listen, your first day surfing sucks. Once you start to learn it and start to get it, and that's what we have now. We have the majority starting to understand it, starting to get it,
right?
And starting to see, oh my God, this shit's amazing. This fucking sport is amazing, versus, oh, you're just writing it off. If you don't know anything, you look at it at a glance, you go, oh, that's terrible. I can't believe they're doing that.
Right.
But when you start to understand the beauty in it, and the function of it, and everything that goes into it, it's an amazing sport.
It really is. It really is. And I think back to my original question, my question might have been like, where do you think it's going? And honestly, it's still doing this and probably will be for quite a bit longer.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting to is when does it end up like baseball? I don't know.
Hello, friends. I just want to take a minute to thank you for all the love and support you've given us over here at Chats and Tats. If you love tattoos, and you love hearing from folks that are going to tell you about their deep personal tattoo journey, stories that I think reveal the beautiful nature of this art form, please give us a like or even give us a follow here on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, leave us a comment. We would love to hear more from you, what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of, less of. Your comments mean the world to us. So with that being said, I want to thank you once again. And now back to the show. Tattoos. I want to switch it over because we're going to be tattooing here in a bit, but maybe a little bit about your tattoo journey. What was your first, what got you? I know you got your first tattoo. That's always an interesting story. Where did your first one happen and why?
Well, my first one was at a tattoo shop on 82nd and I think Division or Powell in Portland, Oregon. It was my 18th birthday.
You remember the name of the shop?
I can't remember the name of the shop.
I used to know. Like I said, tattooed in that town. I might know the place.
It was on 82nd. I walked in and I got a dragon right off the wall.
Okay. Where at?
Turn right on my calf, my back of my calf.
We'll get a look at it. We'll put it on camera later.
Yeah, it's just so some flash. That was my first. That's when it started. And
why did you have some buddies that got tattooed, or just like? That's badass.
I wasn't sure. I was going to get a big Danzig skull across my back. I was going to get a bunch of skulls on my neck. I had no, the one thing I would say is when I was 18 that kind of holds true now, like the most important thing to me about a tattoo is that it looks really fucking cool. like meanings change, everything else, but I just, I wanted to look cool, and I
like the honesty. I did it for the same reason. A lot of people avoid saying that. Sometimes, and no offense to the meaningful tattoos that are out there, I've done thousands of them, and there are meaningful tattoos. Sure. But I sense sometimes people have to have meaning because they can't just say that, which is, I don't know. I just thought it would look badass and maybe chicks would want to hang out with me. That's how I got my first tattoo. I remember it's on my upper back. And I mean, I remember I found anywhere to be with my shirt off. And it was all just to see if women would be like, look at that cool dude with that tat.
Yeah,
you know, it had
you know,
no deep anything to it, you know?
There was not too much deep about me at 18 years old. You know what I mean? And so this is the leg that goes on the skateboard, and I push with the other one. I think that's about as much thought as I thought they could see that one when I'm filming. You know?
Oh, because that's on your calf, and
Yeah,
that okay,
yeah,
all right.
yeah.
So that's why you put it there.
Yep. So that was my first one. Then I did a big Anna on the front of my shin, and let's see. Then I started my back piece. My friend Jason Tolby he's in Portland. He's been working on my back for a while. This one is Mike Ledger, you know, so
Very respected artist.
yeah, I had to wait for a while to get in to see him, but you know, he's kind of he's the man in Hawaii for the genre. Then there's another guy out there, Richie Lucero. I got a couple tattoos from him. He does phenomenal work. This guy is a big Phoenix. This is a guy named Dominic McIntosh. He did my hand, which I actually probably think might be my favorite tattoo. It's just the hand, you know.
Thing's dope.
It kind of pops out. I
Samurai skull.
yeah. I like it. So, you know, the only real thought I ever really had about tattoos particularly is you know, because anybody that's watched my UFC career can watch my tattoos progress.
Right.
What I hate about, well, it's different. I remember I was hanging out with Motley Crue, and they have a whole different style of tattoos. They're like this big around, and they're like, well, I was in Cabo, and you know what I mean, you know. And,
Except Tommy Lee.
and everyone's got a story. Well, I might have told you his tattoo shop actually sponsored me for a while. And he had a tattoo shop on the Strip, you know. So I definitely talked tattoos with him. But you know, my thing was, I wanted people to be able to see my tattoos, whatever I get, when I'm fighting in the cage, when I'm on that stage. I didn't, and I certainly don't want to have to explain to anybody what a tattoo is. You know, it's a cloud, but if you turn it this way, you know, I want it to be. I see that, I know what it is.
Right.
You know, from 20 feet away.
Yeah, I mean, you're a fan of tattooing. It doesn't have to be super meaningful. Decorating, well, you know, it's like does repainting your house or putting a bumper sticker on your car have to be deep and meaningful? But people sometimes do come with that, and they challenge you. What does it mean? And that's always a setup question. It's almost as if you can't give me a real good story right now, then you're a dumbass. And that's why I get. And when people ask me that question, I purposely give them fucked off answers.
And it's usually people with no fucking tattoos. A lot of times they'll be like, so why'd you get it? What's it mean?
Yeah. Very judgy.
Why is it gotta fucking mean anything, dude? You know what I mean?
Or be able to say to them, I just thought it looked badass. You know, I like Japanese art. Samurais are dope. I've read books on, you know. Why can't it just be that?
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. And I love both. I do things that just are meant to look badass, and I'm fucking stoked on doing them. And then I have others where there is that meaning, and everyone's different. They're both fine.
Sure.
But don't judge one or the other. It is what it is. It's your body. Do what you want with it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit. So today, I'm going to say this hopefully right. Musashi.
Yeah.
Famous Japanese warrior, samurai.
Yeah.
Known for killing many men in hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
I don't know the whole story. You've read his books, but that's the character we're going to tattoo on your thigh today.
Yeah.
And I drew a picture with it. It's cutting off the head of a tengu, which is a Japanese demon, just to give it some badassness. But tell us about Musashi. I know it means a lot to you.
Yeah, so I mean, my whole theme already is that kind of that Japanese style, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Musashi, you know, he wrote the Book of Five Rings, which I would put in my headphones before several fights. I listened to the whole book. The thing about that book for me is just the way he looks at things. He looks at things. Everything is considered, but in a very simple manner, you know, which is very much the way that I look at fighting. Like I don't overthink it, but I think about everything. Mm-hmm. You know, he also has a another set of writing that he wrote when he retired called Dokudo, which is his 21 precepts where he wrote them for his disciple. They hang on the wall at my house, actually, and they're hard as fuck. Yeah, this guy was gnarly, dude. I can't remember how 30-something people he killed in confirmed duels, besides the guys he killed in wars.
Wow.
You know, dueling, you know, and I think his first one, he like was like 12. He killed a guy with an oar. He had like the oar to a boat and fucking killed a grown-up samurai, you know, like
Jesus,
like the way they you know, like simple things he says, like he says, you know, don't do anything solely for pleasure's sake, you know, and for me, like, you think about that, it sounds like, oh, that's kind of fucking, that's not cool, but really what he's saying is, you know, derive pleasure from what you do. You know what I mean? Don't go out and seek just pleasure. You should get your pleasure from your work, from what you from what you do, from what you're into, you know. And you know, I don't want to murder his quotes, you know. But there's several of them that I use when I'm coaching. I'm not on camera, so if I get a word wrong or something, I was talking about one yesterday to my guys where he talks about if you break when you break the rhythm of whether it's a house, a body, or somebody's work, if you break the rhythm, the whole thing falls apart, you know. And that's what I was talking about yesterday, because I was teaching striking, you know. And when I'm teaching striking, all I got to do is, if I can get my opponent to do this, to just tense up for a tenth of a second, I know that's my green light, you know. I know I've got them now. If I can break their rhythm, and I think that holds true. You break the rhythm of the body, what happens? You get sick. You know what I mean? You break your rhythm at work, what happens? You're unproductive. You know. Kind
of referencing flow state.
Yeah. So, you know, and being that he's a fucking, you know, an old ass samurai, not one of these new age, you know, positive intention guys, you know. I tend to gravitate towards him personally,
right.
Towards his stuff. So I suppose, you know, I just got done saying how I only get tattoos to be cool. There's a little bit of meaning in this, but first and foremost, I already saw the sketches. It's fucking rad looking. Like that's the most important thing for sure.
No, I'm glad you like it. Yeah, and you know, a lot of my artwork, I just do my wild, surrealistic, whatever comes out of my brain. But for this particular piece, I definitely leaned heavily on a traditional approach to drawing the piece, just because to me that felt more authentic. It's very Japanese in nature, and I didn't want to, like, I don't know. I feel a little awkward doing my own versions of Japanese things like koi fish and dragons. And I did when I was younger. I look back on some of these things. Like, I think I would, oh God, am I going to admit this right now? But I am. So I was a new school guy back in the day, and that was what you got, man. Nobody wanted a sailor tattoo. Nobody wanted black and gray. That shit was their dad's tattoos, their grandpa's tattoos. Had to be new school, had to be, you know, stretched with bubbly eyes, and every color I own had to be in the tattoo. And I got really a big hit with this koi fish I did. Huge koi fish sleeve going up a guy's arm. But I put like a human eye with eyelashes on the koi. And I was so proud of it. It got in all the magazines, and people were calling me up. I love your twist on Japanese. And I did a few more projects like that over the years. And now I just look back and I feel, I'm not ashamed, because it is what it was at the time, but I never want to do it again. Like, I don't want my Japanese tattoos to not look authentic to how they were done by the Japanese. So today's project with you, I definitely have not allowed my new school surrealistic brain to flow in it too deeply, but I did make some adjustments and changes to make it unique and custom for you. Glad you like it. And it's a big tattoo, you guys. So on the show, I typically, you know, we don't have a lot of time to crank out a 5 or 6 hour session. So my goal today is to get it composed on your leg where we want it, and then at least go through and get that outline on you. And then we'll talk later, get you in here and finish this puppy up for you. Sound good?
That sounds awesome, man. Let's do it.
All right, my friend. I'll see you guys on the other side. Let's rip a tat. Welcome back, everybody. Chris, man, you know, it was, I don't know, a couple hours, I think.
Yeah.
How was that for you, bud?
You know what? It wasn't bad. You know, I expected it to be more painful than it was. So that's always a pleasant surprise. You know, I was kind of talking to you. I think you know, being that my body was healthy, you know, it was much easier than past tattoos. Maybe it's your touch or the machine, I don't know, but it wasn't too bad. And dude, the final product is awesome.
Well, it's not even final. As you guys saw, it's just the outline. We don't have time to do a massive everything on a show like this, but it's a good start.
I'm stoked, super stoked.
Composition's so important. Like to me as a tattoo artist, how it sits on that body part. And I think it fits right on there just right. So we're in good shape. All we got to do is fill it in, you know? But, you know, something interesting you did say to me about the pain. And you were saying, you know, Aaron, like in the old days, I would always get tattooed after my fights. Well, after my fights this is the old days, back when you were still partying. I would, you know, eat like shit and party for a week and then get tattooed, and it seemed to hurt more. And I've seen that in the years I've tattooed people. When people come in here, I tell people all the time, they're like, what should I do for my tattoo? I go, what would you do if you had to run a 50-mile marathon tomorrow?
Right.
You would eat healthy, you would go to bed, you get some good rest. And that's what you do. That's how, it's same thing people should be doing before. And I'm not talking about coming in and getting a little jammer. Anyone can do that, wasted or hungover. But you start doing sleeves and big work. You better come in here ready for like an athletic event, like you would do for an athletic event.
Yeah, definitely especially for the size of it. I mean, it's my whole quad. You got most of my quad has got something on it now. Yeah, and I feel I'm a little tired.
Yeah,
not gonna lie, but that's about it. That's about it. Yeah.
Something I heard, and I don't know the details on this. Somebody told me, I don't know where I heard it, but you got COVID twice, but the second time around you got rocked.
Yeah. So I got COVID a couple times. First time was no problem. You know, people can. I don't care politically or whatever where you stand. You know. I was a non-vaxxer, you know. Mm-hmm. I got COVID the first time, and you know, I took everything you're supposed to take. You know, I did what you're supposed to do, and I beat it. I beat it no problem. You know, I was still doing some working around the house and everything else. You know, I quarantined, but you know, it didn't knock me over. So the second time I got it, I really wasn't worried. I did the same thing I did the first. You know, I was getting in the sauna. And, you know, I beat it. I beat it pretty quick. At least that's what I thought. You know, I went back. I got a negative COVID test. I said, okay, I'm good. Went back to work. I just had a little cough. You know, I had a light cough in my lungs. And that progressively got worse over the next 2.5, 3 days to the point where I was trying to I'd have to stop every 30 seconds to catch my wind. And my buddy's like, you need to go to the hospital, dude. And I'm like, nah, I'm fine, you know. And he's like, no, go, you know. So I'm like, okay, I'll go to the clinic. I went to the clinic, and the clinic was like, we're calling an ambulance. You know, you need to go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, and they're like, fuck, we need to get, you know, they did some EKG and shit. They're like, oh, your heart's failing. We got to get you in real quick. And really, once I got to the hospital, things went from bad to worse. You know, I had basically developed pneumonia in my lungs from the COVID, and which had caused a bunch of water to build up around my organs, which caused my heart to start shutting down. I got in the hospital, and then I developed a staph infection in my lungs, which turned into ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome. And then basically the lungs more or less shut down. They're giving me all these antibiotics, trying to clear this infection out of my lungs, and my kidney and liver shut down from that. Jesus. So now my lungs were failing, my heart was failing, my ejection fraction, which was good, which was up over 50, because I had past heart issues years ago, so I stay up with my cardiologist, and I was healthy and looking good. Went from 50 to 8, so barely pumping. I mean, it's pumping, but nothing's coming in or out. And long story short, I ended up in the ICU. I couldn't, they had me, they went from oxygen to, like a sleep app machine where, with pure oxygen, where they're blowing to hey, we can't, my blood oxygen, and I'm watching it, would just continue to get lower and lower, and then finally came to a point where it was like, hey, we got to put this guy on the respirator, and I was asked, hey, what are the chances I'm living? I remember that my cardiologist says, I'm cautiously optimistic, whatever the fuck that means, right?
Right.
So but I'm not stupid. I still had my cell phone, so I had Google, and I'm Googling my odds, and the odds were very slim. To say the least, the odds were extremely slim when you have 4 organ failure, and you're going on a respirator. So I made my last said my goodbyes, made that last text, okay, let's go, and they put me on that they put me on the respirator. But what was weird is they induce a coma. They use fentanyl to induce this coma, and somehow I could you're restrained. I don't want to say handcuffed and shackled, but yeah, you're handcuffed and shackled to the bed because they don't want you to pull out the tubes, right? Like, I still knew where I was at times, and I could bubble up almost to the surface and hear the room. My buddy Jake figured out that he could put a piece of paper under my hand, and I could write letters from. So I'm in the fucking spirit realm, and I'm writing letters to the real world,
Whoa.
And I was fighting real hard because there was some stuff with my child and my money, and that I wasn't able to get out before I had lost the ability to speak, or see for that matter. I couldn't, but I could hear, and so finally and I still have the piece of paper. The last thing I wrote was call Tommy, tell him to say a prayer, and he's a friend, a mentor of mine. He happens to also be my sponsor in recovery, and just a real fucking spiritual guy. And he said this prayer, and I remember listening to it. And after I listened to it, I said, God, universe, whatever, do with me what you will. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing left in me. There's no fight, and I remember I kind of just fell back into the darkness. And about 30 minutes later, they were waking. They were pulling me back out. They were waking me back up, and if you've ever watched that original Matrix, when he gets flushed from the Matrix, that's what it feels like to come when they pull you back out, and this tube's all the way down, and they're pulling this out, and you're like, what the fuck? And all of a sudden there's these lights in your face, and you're back alive again when you've been in a coma for days, And that first drink of apple juice is pretty intense too. I gotta tell you, dude. It was like I literally. I remember my chick was there in the emergency room. Nurse goes, watch this. And she hands me that first sip of I started bawling because it's just, the flavor is so intense. You haven't eaten for days,
right?
And then it's just boom, and at that point I realized I was gonna make it,
Fuck, dude.
It's one of those weird things. People, they go, "You're so fucking tough." And I'm like, "Listen, man, it wasn't me. I don't want to say I gave up, but
surrender, maybe.
But yeah, that's a better word. I just surrendered more or less to the circumstance,
Mm-hmm.
and I think when I did that. That's what, and whatever else is what, hopefully gave my body at least I believe gave my body the chance to heal. I allowed whatever else it is to do its work instead of fighting and getting in the way.
Well, I mean, it's 30 minutes after you go through this mental process, why'd they bring you out? You must have started showing signs of a better heart rate, or something must have occurred physically.
My buddy was in the room, and he's like, as soon as you said that prayer, all your vitals started changing.
Whoa.
And he said it was crazy. He said they came in and they're looking at your numbers, and your numbers just started going up. And then all of a sudden the doctor was like, I think we can bring him out if he's, he stays here for a few minutes. And I stayed there, and bro, I was back in the land of the living, just like that, And,
That's a powerful story, man.
thank you.
And I think, and I just want to know more about like your perspective. I mean, you faced death. You had basically said, "I'm ready to die. I'm okay with this. This is what's going to happen. I've lived my life. It's over." You got right to death's door, and then came back. And let me know a little bit, like, what's perspective like for you now? I'm assuming it's a bit different.
We've all heard it. You're not going to care what kind of phone you have. When you're dying, you're not going to care about what kind of car. That's all very true.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I left with. What you're going to care about is the relationships.
Mm.
What you're going to miss when you're dying is the thought of seeing your child graduate high school.
Right.
It's the thought of watching your friends go through life. It's the thought, the being part of the planet, man. Being part of life, and I feel like going in, I was overwhelmed with, especially because of my career and my life, and having made all this money and lost it, and now having a child. I thought I had to go back and earn all this and redeem myself and build this gym, and I was trying to carry everything on my back.
Mm.
And what I learned is, not only do I have some of the greatest friends in the world nowadays that I can actually trust and rely on and depend on, but they got my back, and fucking God or whatever you relate to, that has my back too. It fucking carried me through, and well, it took several, after I got out of the hospital, it was still another month before I could get back to work. I was stuck at home on oxygen, and, ultimately the doctor's like, it's a miracle, like your recovery is incredible. We thought you'd never be off oxygen again, and you're walking around without oxygen. You're fine. So the biggest thing I've taken away is, it's not the destination, it's the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We've all heard that before. Well, it's true. You have to appreciate the now, the moment. You have to make time for your kids and your family and your friends and your life now. You can't just focus on the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying don't focus, but you have to compartmentalize those things. So when I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm home, I'm home. And I'm home. When I'm home 100%. If shit comes up, I do my job. I do whatever it takes me to fix the situation or whatever it is I'm supposed to do. And beyond that, fuck it. Whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. That's what I took away.
Wow, it's pretty awesome. I think anybody could use more of that. I know those sayings. I've read a lot of those books. I've got fucking tattooed on my hands. Yeah. But to have gone what you've gone through, I'm sure it's way more right in your focus.
We've all heard it. It was just, I don't even want to say a reminder, but it was more of a slap in the face.
Yeah.
Like, hey, motherfucker, this is what's important. You know what I mean? And this is what's not important.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not you're at the point in your life where you can wrap your head around that and how it is, for me, it was a very abrupt situation, that caused me to be able to wrap my head around that. For some people, as they get older, they start to see it more and more.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a drop in the bucket type of thing. Either way, it's fine. But I think, the key to happiness, I think that, it's important, is having all those pieces and learning, work hard when you're working, play hard when you're playing, be with your family when you're with your family,
right.
if there's stuff going on in the world and you can't do anything about it, well, guess what? You fucking can't do anything about it. Do something about the shit that you can do something about.
Yeah.
If that even makes sense, you know.
It does, yeah.
You know, so for me, you know, I do everything I can to focus on, you know, I try to affect one person at a time, whether that's, you know, in one of my friends, somebody in recovery that needs help, wants to talk to somebody, or somebody at my gym, you know, I try to change the world or affect the, one person at a time, you know, because I know I can make a difference that way.
Fuck, man. Thank you for that. A lot for me to you. I'm thanking you. And I'm sure a lot of people hearing are going to feel the same way. That was extremely inspiring.
Thank you.
Dude. And hey, and congratulations on not dying.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Tell people the name of your gym, where you're at, how to get a hold of you, whatever. Let's hear about that.
So the training center, we're right in Pacific Beach, San Diego. So, you know, if you're on vacation, if you live here, if you're traveling through, whatever, we'd love to have you. Whether you want to be a pro or you've never trained a day in your life. Super open gym. We're open to everybody. We're, you know, Chris Leben MMA is my Instagram. The training center _SD is the Instagram for the gym, you know, and then of course, you know, Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. If you look, you can find both me and the gym. You know,
we'll provide links for all this at the end of the show too. Hell yeah, man. Well, there you have everybody. There's a fantastic person with a story like that would, if you're interested in MMA and learning all these arts, I would highly suggest you check it out.
Right on, man. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, buddy. It was
Awesome.
great. Good times. Stay tuned. Next week, got another awesome guest coming your way. Until then, take care. Peace and love and gratitude. I think that was the theme of today. Gratitude.